everyone, welcome to my kitchen. My name is Michael and today I'm going to be sharing with you two recipes. I'm going to show you how to make a pie crust from scratch, and then we're going to make this wonderful quiche with some cheddar cheese, sausage, and spinach. Stay with me and I'll show you how this comes together. Let's get started making our quiche. So first we're going to start with the crust, and this will be a recipe for a 9-inch deep dish pie crust. So if you want to make yours from scratch, I'm going to show you how to do that today. But if you want to buy the pre-made ones from the store, you definitely can use that. Just make sure you get the 9-inch deep dish pie crust. All right, so let's get started with our ingredients. I've got 1 1/4 cup of flour, all-purpose flour. I've got 1/4 cup of water, and I've got some ice cubes in it because we want everything to be really cold. I've got 1/4 teaspoon of salt, and I've got 1 stick of butter that I'm going to take and I'm going to cut up into little quarters. And with this, I'm just going to kind of cut it into little 1/2-inch pieces, and then I'm going to take each into one of those little pieces and I'm going to cut those into little quarters. So your pieces should look like that, and I'm going to continue to work on the rest of this. So now that we've got our butter cut up into little cubes, I'm going to put this back in the freezer because mine's been sitting out for a little while as I've been prepping for this. So I'm going to put this in the freezer for about 5 minutes. I want to get this back cold again, and I'm going to put my ice water back in the refrigerator because I want that to be cold also, and then we'll work on our dry ingredients. I'll be right back. So I've got 1 1/4 cups of all-purpose flour, and I've got 1/4 teaspoon of salt, and I'm just going to take a whisk. This is a cool little whisk that I've got. It's a new little gadget that I picked up. And it is a whisk, and I'll leave the link in the description box below of what it is that I've got if you're interested in it. It does really good for whisking things together. All right, I am back. My butter is out of the freezer now, and it's gotten really cold again. So let's go ahead and incorporate that into our flour. So what we're going to do is we're just going to put that into our flour. Now we're going to take our clean hands, and we're going to make sure that every piece of that butter has a little bit of flour on the outside of it. All right, now we're going to take our thumbs and our forefinger, and we're just going to kind of push it like that, and we're going to make sure that that gets covered in flour. We're going to constantly keep doing that until we get all the pieces done. All right, that is where we are now with our flour and our butter mixture. You see I've got some nice sized pieces still in there, and I've got some that are pea sized, but the bulk of it is, it looks like cornmeal. That's what it is. So my house is a little bit warm today and my hands are not cold, so I'm going to pop this back in the refrigerator just for a couple of minutes just to make sure that the butter gets cold again. But if your house is a little bit cooler and your hands aren't hot, then you can definitely continue working on this. I'll be right back in just a couple of minutes. All right, I am back, and I've got my flour and butter out of the refrigerator again, and I've got my ice cold water here. Like I said, we want really cold ingredients when we're making this. And this is 1/4 cup, but I'm gonna measure it out in tablespoons. And normally I can get about 5 tablespoons in it to where we want it to be. So I'm going to start out with maybe 3. And we're going to clean hands again, and we're going to go right back in there. We're not going to knead this because we don't want bread. We're just want to make sure that we get enough moisture into the flour that we can at least get it to stick together. That's getting pretty close. Once you can hold it together, but there's still a lot of it that's falling apart. So let's put another couple of tablespoons in there and see where we're at. All right, that's 5 now. Let's see where we're at with 5. And that is holding together really good. So I'm not going to put any more in it. I think we are where I want it to be. See, that's holding together. All right, so let me clean my hands up, and I will get a seal mat here on the countertop, and we will get this put together. All right, we are ready to put our dough together now. So I've got just a little bit of flour here, and I've got a silicone mat down here that we're going to put the dough out on. And you're thinking, this isn't going to work, but let me tell you, it will come together. So I'm just going to take the mat, let the mat be your friend, and just kind of push it together. You can kind of turn it sideways and just kind of keep working it until it comes together. It'll all eventually come into it together. Like I say, we're not going to knead this. We don't want bread. We want a nice fluffy crust. All right, now that we've got our dough into this shape here, and we've got, you can see here some nice striations of the butter in it, I'm going to get a piece of cling film, and we're going to put that around it, and we're going to wrap it up really tightly. All right, now that I've got my dough and my cling film, it goes back in the refrigerator between 30 minutes to an hour so that it can get chilled back down again, and then we'll get it out and we'll roll it out and put it into our pie pan. So stay with me and I'll show you what happens next. All right, we are back, and I've got my pie crust out of the refrigerator. I did let it sit in there for 30 minutes, and then I did remove it for about 5 minutes. If you leave it in there for an hour, I want to leave it out maybe 10 minutes. It kind of softens it up a little bit. It won't bring it completely back to room temperature. It will roll easier when you get your rolling pin on it. So like I say, 30 minutes, and then I've let it set out for about 5 minutes, and we're going to take the wrapper off of it now. And we're going to put some flour on our silicone mat here. All right, so then I'm going to take the rolling pin and I'm going to put just a little bit of flour on it, and we're going to roll this out to about 12 inches. And this little outer ring here on this mat is really nice because it will kind of shows me where that's at. So as we roll it out, we want to keep it turning. And that way we kind of get an even thickness all the way around. And the dough is very forgiving. So if you see some cracks in it, you can just put those back together again and it'll come back nicely back to it. So I'm going to continue to roll this out until I get it into the shape I want, and then I'll be right back. All right, there we go. I've got my dough into the shape that I want, and I'm just going to kind of pull it up on this rolling pin here. And we're going to roll it up onto it. And then I'm going to bring my pie pan over, and we're just going to kind of roll it into it. All right, so you can see that I've got just a little bit more on this side. So we don't want to push it down into it. We want to kind of ease it into the pie pan. We don't want to stretch it. And just by lifting it up on the corners, you can actually just push it down into it. And at this point, you can just go around the sides and just kind of make it nice and even. If it kind of gets bunched up a little bit, you can just take your finger and just kind of go around and smooth it out. Okay, now that we've got our pie into our pie pan, if there's any hanging off the side, you can just pinch it off just a little bit. And we can actually reuse some of that if there's some holes in it that you can use it to fill in. So like I've got a little gap here. I can bring some of that in here and just pinch it right into it, and it fills it in nicely. So I'm going to go around and just kind of pull off just a little bit of this off on the outside. If you've got some kitchen scissors, you can definitely use those to cut that off. I'm just going to kind of tear it off. It's very forgiving. Now we're going to take it and we're just going to kind of turn it up on the end so that we get a nice edge on it. And I'm going to continue to do that all the way around on the outside. Now that we've got our dough in our pie pan and we've got the lip on it, let me see if I can turn that up a little bit so you can see what that looks like. I've just got it captured just on the edge of it now around, and that's what you want it to. You want it to be able to capture it on the sides. And then you're going to take your index. You can leave it like this if you want to. This is very, it'll cook very nicely just like this. If you want to put the little flutings on the top of it, you take your index finger and your other finger and your thumb and you kind of push it in like that. And you just kind of go around the outside of the pie crust and just kind of push it in. All right, now that we've got our dough in our pie pan, we want to now blind bake this. And if you're making this, you definitely want to bake this so that it will stay into the shape that it's in. If you don't, and you try to put it into your, put your filling and everything in it, it could collapse in on itself. So what we're going to do is called blind baking. And I've got just a piece of parchment paper here that I've crumbled up. Just kind of make it into the shape at the bottom of this. And I'm going to put that in. We don't want to put any extra pressure on the sides of it so that we push it down. We just want to kind of make sure that we've got our parchment paper in the bottom. And then I've done the same thing to some aluminum foil. And I'm going to push that down into the parchment paper. And I have some pie weights. These are porcelain pie weights. If you don't have any pie weights, you can definitely use dry beans and you can put those in there. But I make a lot of pie dough, and so I'm going to use these pie weights, and they are just little ceramic balls like this that you can see here. And we're going to put those into the bottom of our pan. And for a deep dish pan, mine takes 2 pounds of these things. Each one of these little boxes is a pound, and I'll put the link in the description box below if you'd like to get some of those. But the deep dish shell that I've got here, pan, takes about 2 of them. And we want to kind of get those around to the side so that we get a nice covering. Like I say, if you don't have these, you can definitely use beans. Dry beans will do the same thing. So I'm going to put this in my preheated 425-degree oven, and I'm going to bake this for 15 minutes, and then I'll be back and show you what it looks like. All right, everyone, we are back, and I've got my pie out of the oven, my pie shell out of the oven. It's been in there for 15 minutes, and I'm just going to use the corners of the paper here and the aluminum foil to kind of use that to help me pull the pie weights out, because you don't want those flying all over the kitchen. There we go. So I've taken one egg that I've beaten here, and I'm going to take this little brush and I'm going to paint the inside of it. I'm not going to be doing the lip of the crust because I don't want that to get any browner than what it already is. At this point, we're going to take a fork and we're just going to kind of poke some holes around in it because we don't want our pie dough to rise up off the bottom of the pan. We want it to vent. I'm going to put some on the sides. If you put the marks in it before you put the egg wash in it, you could seal up the holes, so I do this afterwards. So I've just made a few marks on the bottom. I'm going to put this back in my 425-degree oven for about 5 more minutes. If you don't want your top of your crust there to get any browner than what it already is until you've had an opportunity to bake your pie, you can just take a piece of aluminum foil and just cut the center out of it, and you can kind of lay that on the top of it, and that'll protect your outside of your pie, the lip of your crust there, so that it doesn't get any browner. So I'm going to put this back in the oven for 5 minutes, let my egg wash cook on the shell, and then we'll be done. All right, now that we've got our pie crust made, let's go ahead and start on our quiche. As I said earlier, you can either make it from scratch and follow my directions that we had in this video, or you can actually buy the ones in the store that are pre-made. This is a 9-inch deep dish. Just remember, when you're making one from scratch, you'll need to blind bake it before you put any of the wet ingredients in it. The ones that you get at the store, you don't have to do that. So definitely if you make one from scratch, make sure you blind bake it before you put any of the wet ingredients in it. All right, let's get started with our quiche now. Tonight I'm going to be making a sausage, spinach, and cheese quiche. So I've got some sausage that I've already pre-cooked here, and I'm just going to take the back of a fork and I'm just going to smash those up into, little pieces like that as we get ready to put into our pie shell. All right, so now that I got my sausage crumbled up, you can use any kind of meat that you want. You can use bacon, you can cook that and crumble it up, or if you've got a rotisserie chicken or some chicken, you can pull that off the bone and crumble that up. If you've got some pork, it's whatever you'd like to do. If you don't want to put any meat in it, this recipe, you definitely don't have to put any in it, but I had some sausage here, and again, this was 4 patties that I had here. So with my spinach, I have one of the boxes that I got in the freezer section at the store. It was a 10-ounce box, and I let that defrost, and it's going to have a lot of moisture in it, so you'll take your clean hand and just kind of squeeze the moisture out of it because you want that dry. You don't want to put any more moisture into your pie that you need to. So definitely, if you buy it like this, definitely squeeze out a lot of that moisture because it's going to have a lot in it when it defrosts. Then I've got about a half a cup of onion here that I'll be sauteing here in just a minute. And these other 2 ingredients here are been at room temperature now. I've got 2 cups of whipping cream, and I've got 8 eggs here. And the reason for that is it just cooks easier when everything's at the same temperature. So you don't want anything that's warmer, taking a little bit, not as long to cook as something that's cold. So definitely if you can get your milk or your whipping cream here to room temperature along with your eggs, that'd be great. Then I've got a cup and a half of white sharp cheddar cheese. You can use any kind of cheese that you like to in it. This is what I had on hand, and this is what I've got. And I've got salt and pepper to taste. So I'm going to meet you at the stove, and we're going to saute our onions. I'll be right back. All right, I've got my carbon steel pan here, and I'm going to put just a little bit of olive oil on the bottom of it. If you want to use a neutral vegetable oil, you can. And if you don't like onions, you can definitely omit these if you don't like onions or don't want any onions in your quiche. It's optional. You can definitely put any ingredients in your quiche that you want. If you don't, like I say, if you don't like the onions, you don't have to put those in there. If you like green peppers, you can do that. Put you some green peppers in a skillet here and saute those. That would be great. You want to kind of give them a little bit of a cooking before you put them in there. That way it kind of gives them a little bit of head start. So it's just whatever you want to put in it. It's definitely up to you how you want to do that. And if you use fresh spinach, then I would take that and kind of wilt it down a little bit so that it kind of gives a little bit opportunity to get a little cooked before you put it in there. So mine, with this, the way that I've got mine, is it's already shredded like that, so it's not going to take up a lot of space in the pan when I put it in there. But if you're using fresh, you definitely might want to wilt that down before you put it into your pie shell. All right, my skillet has gotten hot. Let's put our onions in. And I'm just going to kind of caramelize these just a little bit. We'll cook them for about 3 to 4 minutes. Get them caramelized, get them cooked, and that way we don't have that raw onion taste in our quiche. All right, we've got our onions caramelized now. I've got them cooked down, and they've got a nice little brown color to them. So I'm going to let these sit in here for about 30 more seconds, and then I'm going to pull these out, and we'll come back and we'll start assembling our quiche. All right, now that we've got our onions caramelized, let's go ahead and get our other ingredients mixed together. So I've got my 8 eggs here, and I'm just going to kind of whisk those together, and I'm going to put those in this bowl here, and then I'm going to take my 2 cups of whipping cream, and I'm going to put that in with my eggs, and we'll give that a good mix through. All right, let's use this whisk, and we'll get this all whisked together. And at this point, we want to add a little bit of salt and pepper to taste. So I'm just going to put just a little bit in there, a couple of pinches of salt and a couple of pinches of pepper. You can always add more once you get to the table with it. You can put some on the top of it, but if you get too much in it, you definitely can't get it out. So we'll add just a little bit into our mixture. All right, now that we've got our eggs and our whipping cream together, let's get our pie crust up here. And I think this has cooled down enough that I can handle it now. So we'll start with our sausage, and we're going to put the sausage into the bottom of our pie crust, and we just want to kind of spread that out. And then we're going to take our onions and do the same thing. I did take a paper towel with these once I pulled them out and just kind of got some of the grease off of them. So definitely if you want to do that, you can, but we'll just kind of spread these out here across the bottom. Now we'll take our spinach, and you can use your hand for this if you like, and just kind of, sprinkle it around. It will cook through, and when you put your liquid in, it'll float to the top, some of it will. So how much ever you want to put in there, definitely it is up to you. If you want to use the whole box, you can. Probably going to use about half of this. We'll take a look at it and see once I get it in here to see where we're at with it. All right, that's about half of that I'm going to put in there, and then I'm going to take my cheese, and we'll just kind of sprinkle that around on top of that. You can put as much or as little of this as you like in there. I love a lot of cheese in mine. What I'll probably do once I get it in the oven and bacon, once it gets in there for about 30 minutes, and I'm going to come in and sprinkle a little bit more on the top. They'll get a little bit more on the top of it. Now we're going to take our eggs and cream mixture, and we're just going to pour that over the top. Just kind of spread it around. All right, there we go. We've got our quiche put together now. It is ready to go in the oven, and I've got my oven preheated to 350. And this will cook for about 50 minutes to an hour. But definitely keep a watch on it once it gets about 45 minutes. How you're going to tell that it's done is when you shake it. If it doesn't jiggle as much, that means it's actually done. So between 50 minutes to an hour, the last one that I cooked of these took about an hour for it to cook in my oven. Everybody's is going to be a little bit different. So you won't be able to test it with the wooden pick or toothpick, because it might come out wet all the way around it. Because once you pull it out, it's going to continue to set up. So once it's not, see this how jiggly this is here. So I'll let you take a look at it when I pull it out. You won't be able to see a lot of the jiggle, and it'll have been stopped. So, all right, we are back. My quiche is done. I want you to take a look at that, what that looks like. When I was talking earlier, when you can tell if it's done or not, if you jiggle it like that and you don't see it moving, then you know that it's done. So mine cooked at an hour, and I'm going to let mine sit out here and cool now. You need to let it sit for about 30 minutes for it to cool down so that it will continue to set up, because it's still cooking on the inside of it. So definitely let it set up before you cut into it. That way it'll be nice and firm when you cut it. So as my quiche is cooling down here, I thought I would add a little bit more cheese to the top of it. So I've grated some more cheese up on it, and I'm going to put it on the top here. This will melt into it nicely because it is still piping hot right out of the oven. So this is where I'm going to add a little bit more cheese. And if you want to melt it, you can pop it back in the oven for about a minute or two, and that'll melt right on the top of it. But I think from the heat of that, it's going to melt it into it nicely. I can see it melting into it. So that's another way you can add some more cheese to your quiche. All right, my quiche has cooled down now, and I did add more cheese to it as you saw earlier. So why not add more cheese? It's excellent, right? All right, let's cut into our quiche and see what we've got. All right, I wanted to show you this, see what the inside looks like of that. It is incredible. We've got our spinach, we've got our cheese, we've got our sausage. Couldn't look any better than that. All right, let's give this a taste test. This is probably my best quiche that I have ever made. I wish you were here with me. I would definitely share this quiche with you. And I hope this has inspired you to make some pie crust and a quiche out of this recipes today. So if you like this content, maybe you might want to check out one of these other two over here. You might find something else you like. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And you definitely need to try this quiche. It is a winner. Thanks for watching. We'll see you in my next video. Bye-bye now.